The first light over the Rajasthan desert did not bring warmth. It slid over the broken metal skeletons of abandoned storage tanks, caught on coils of rusted pipe, and finally settled on a concrete pit sunk into the sand like a wound. From a distance, it looked like a simple square of shadow. Only when you came closer did you see that the shadow moved, thick and slow, like something breathing in the dark. It was crude oil, 3, maybe 4 meters deep, a black mirror that reflected nothing, swallowing the sunrise whole. Near the far wall, a small shape lay half submerged in that darkness. She had fought for hours. The marks were still there on the stained concrete, faint red smears where tiny claws had scraped again and again until the pads tore and bled. At some point in the long night, her cries had shredded into silence. Her throat burned, her nostrils filled with the bitter reek of petroleum. The oil had matted her golden fur into a slick shell so that she no longer looked like a creature at all, just a lump of black, trembling with each shallow breath. 40 hours since she slipped into the pit, 30 hours since she last tried to climb out, 20 hours since the last hoarse cry for a mother who never came. Somewhere between then and now, the Leopard Cub had made the only decision left to her. She stopped. She found a place where the oil was a little less deep, where the concrete sloped up a few inches toward the rim. She rested her head against the cold wall, closed her burning eyes, and waited for her small heart to decide it had pumped enough. The desert was quiet around her. No birds, no insects. Just the faint sigh of wind moving over sand and twisted metal. Somewhere beyond the horizon, men argued over oil prices and retirement planning, over mortgages and life insurance and health insurance coverage. In this pit, all of that meant nothing. There was only blackness. Only the slow drowning of a life that had not yet learned the shape of the world. A fly landed on her ear. She did not flick it away. Her body had already begun to practice being still. Up on the rim of the pit, boot soles crunched on sand and gravel. The sound came from behind a low concrete barrier, a cautious, measured step rather than the careless stride of a worker. The cub did not lift her head. She had heard footsteps before, far away. Trucks, generators, men shouting in a language she did not know. None of it had mattered. Nothing had ever reached down into the pit. The boot stopped. A shadow fell across the black surface. For a long moment, the man did not move. He stood there with his hands resting on the cracked railing, shoulders slightly hunched, as if the desert wind heaved some invisible weight against his back. His name was Noah Blake, though the cub did not know that. All she knew was that the shadow had changed, and a faint vibration of breath now joined the wind. Noah looked down into the pit and thought at first that it was empty. The oil was so dark it might have been a hole cut straight through the earth. Heat shimmered above it, warping the air, making it hard to focus. He had already decided this would be his last morning on this site, his last day documenting yet another slow catastrophe. One more set of photographs, one more report, then home, to an apartment that felt more like a storage unit for grief. He almost turned away. Then something in the corner twitched. His eyes narrowed. He leaned forward, the old muscles in his back complaining, and squinted along the far edge of the pit. A smear of black against black. Nothing, he told himself, just a floating clump of hardened sludge, the kind that gathered where the oil crusted near the walls. The smear rose and fell. Not much, barely more than the width of 2 fingers, but enough that he saw it, enough that his chest tightened and his breath stopped halfway. He stayed like that for several seconds, bent over the railing, watching. In the quiet of the morning, he could hear it now, the slightest wet rattling sound, a breath that didn't know if it wanted to come or go. 7, 8 times in half a minute. Dying, his mind whispered, the old training kicking in despite himself. respiratory rate critically low, hypothermia in spite of the heat, chemical burns. The shape against the wall shivered once. A thin ribbon of oil slid from its side and melted into the surface below. Noah swallowed. His tongue tasted of dust and metal. He had seen dead things every day for the last week. Birds stuck in slick puddles, goats collapsed near poisoned streams, small bodies bloated and still along the edge of wastewater channels. He had documented them all without touching a single one. His job was to bear witness, to gather evidence, not to intervene. If you're watching this on a quiet screen somewhere far from this desert, you may already feel your own chest tighten. If you believe that some stories are worth seeing through to the end, that fragile lives and second chances still matter in a loud, restless world, this is the kind of moment we share on Whispering Hearts. It's where people like you and Noah meet creatures like her for a few stolen minutes. If you want to be there for the next story, a heartbeat away from ending, you can subscribe, sit with us, and listen. But here, on the edge of the pit, Noah heard nothing except that ragged breath. He shifted his weight and the railing creaked under his hands. The sound echoed off the concrete walls, bounced back up, and brushed the lump in the corner like a touch. The cub's eyes opened. They were not black, not at all. In the narrow slit where oil had not yet glued the lid shut, a thin line of gold flared against the darkness. For a fraction of a second, that gold found Noah's face at the top of the world. There was no plea in it, no hope, only a dim, quiet awareness. Not alone. Not yet. Noah's fingers tightened on the railing until the knuckles whitened. Something old and raw rose in his throat, memory maybe, or guilt, or the echo of a voice he hadn't heard in months. The desert, the pit, the abandoned refinery, all of it seemed to pull inward around that tiny point of gold, as if the whole landscape were holding its breath with her. The thought came uninvited and sharp. If I walk away now, she dies here, and no one ever knows she was. The wind gusted, carrying the sour reek of crude oil up over the rim, stinging his eyes. When he blinked, the connection broke. The gold disappeared as her lid slid shut again, slow and heavy. The pit returned to blackness. Noah straightened, his heart stumbling back into a rough rhythm. For a moment, he simply stood there listening to his own pulse in his ears, feeling the weight of the decision gather like storm clouds at the back of his mind. He had come here to document death. He hadn't planned on finding one life that was still trying, very quietly, not to let go.
Noah did not leave the edge of the pit right away. His boots stayed planted in the sand, his hands still gripping the railing as if something inside him knew better than he did. But another part of him, older, heavier, living inside the cracks left by grief, was already pulling him backward into a memory he hated more than any place on earth. It returned the way unwanted memories always do, fast, vivid, without mercy. 18 months earlier, he had been climbing into his truck after a double shift at the station. His phone buzzed with a neighbor's number, then another, then the building manager. He answered on the third call. A voice he barely knew said two words that hollowed him out instantly. "Your building." For a moment, he thought it meant a break-in, or a burst pipe, or maybe a medical emergency on another floor. Then the man said, "There's smoke. Fire crews are on the way. Your wife already left with Liam." But Megan hadn't left with Liam. When Noah reached the bridge leading to their neighborhood, the traffic wasn't just slow, it was stopped. A truck had jackknifed across both lanes, steel twisted like ribbon. Cars were backed up for miles. He honked, leaned out his window, shouted, begged, but nothing moved. Sirens echoed from somewhere ahead. A column of black smoke climbed into the evening sky, staining it the same color as the pit before him now. He left his truck on the shoulder and ran. He ran until his ribs screamed and his legs felt like wet sandbags. When he reached the apartment complex, 2 fire engines blocked the entrance, lights strobing red against the pale stucco walls. Firefighters moved in organized chaos, hoses snaking across the pavement, radios crackling, people shouting names. Someone grabbed Noah by the shoulders, trying to hold him back, but he tore free. He saw Megan first, sitting on the curb, wrapped in a blanket she didn't seem to feel. Her hands were shaking. Her eyes were locked on a stretcher coming out of the smoke. On that stretcher lay a small figure, too still. Liam. 6 years old, thin, bright, stubborn, always bargaining for one more bedtime story. His hair was damp with soot and water. His face was gray. A paramedic moved beside him, checking vitals Noah already knew would not be there. No, let me. Noah pushed forward, but Megan's hand clutched his sleeve weakly. You're late, she whispered. Not accusing, not angry, just telling the truth as she saw it. You were late. 2 minutes. That was what the paramedic said later. If Noah had arrived 2 minutes earlier, he might have held Liam's hand while he still breathed, might have spoken the words a father is supposed to say, might have kissed his son's forehead before it went cold. 2 minutes. A margin so small it wasn't even measurable in the real world. But in Noah's world, it became the dividing line between the man he had been and the man standing now on the rim of a poisoned pit in the desert. His marriage cracked under the weight of those minutes. Not in one clean break, but slowly, silent dinners, long absences, conversations avoiding the words they were most afraid of. When Megan finally asked for the divorce, she didn't raise her voice. She just said she couldn't look at him without seeing the seconds between life and death. He didn't blame her. He couldn't look at himself either. Noah returned to the present with a sharp inhale, as if surfacing from deep water. The pit still glistened below. The cub had not moved. The faint rise and fall of her ribs looked weaker than moments before. She was losing the fight. The desert wind brushed against his face the same way it had brushed across the stretcher that night. Hot, dry, indifferent. He let go of the railing and stepped back. For a moment he stared at his hands. Hands that had broken down burning doors, pulled strangers from wrecks, saved people he never saw again. Hands that had not been there for the only life that mattered. He turned away from the pit, intent on walking back to the truck, back to the familiar numbness that had carried him through a year and a half. But another sound cut through the quiet. A faint, stuttering cough. Almost too soft to hear. Almost, but not quite. He turned again. The cub's head had lifted a fraction, no more than an inch. A thread of oil dripped from her muzzle. Her eyes remained shut, but the movement was unmistakable. Life. Barely, but still there. Noah exhaled through his teeth, a slow, painful breath that trembled at the end. He felt something inside him shift, something he hadn't allowed to move in months. Not hope, not courage, just the smallest spark of unwillingness to watch something else die when he could reach it. "Don't you quit on me," he murmured, though the cub couldn't hear him. His voice sounded rough, older than he remembered. "Not yet." The desert gave no answer. Another breath rattled from the cub's tiny chest. It was enough. Noah stepped closer to the rim again, every instinct trained into him over 2 decades, pushing him forward despite everything grief had carved out of him. He leaned over, studying the walls, judging angles, measuring distances the way he once measured burning stairwells and collapsing floors. He could climb down. It would be stupid, reckless, dangerous, but he could. A gust of wind rolled across the pit, and for a heartbeat he smelled smoke. Not oil, but the ghost of that other night, the night he could never change. 2 minutes late. He clenched his jaw. Not this time. If you're listening now, maybe you understand that feeling. The decision to do something simply because you can't stand the weight of doing nothing. It's the kind of choice we talk about often on Whispering Hearts, where small moments change the direction of a life. If you want to be here when Noah makes his own impossible choice, you can follow along with us. But here, standing above the black pit, no one was watching him except a dying cub. And Noah Blake, the man who had once run toward flames without hesitation, finally let his breath settle into something steady. This time, he would not arrive late.
Before Noah Blake found the dying cub in the pit, before the gold flash of her eyes pressed a crack through the wall he'd spent 18 months rebuilding around himself, this assignment was supposed to be simple, quiet, a final obligation before he packed up what was left of his life and sold the apartment in Denver that still smelled faintly of Liam's shampoo whenever he opened the closet. The Rajasthan site had been described to him as routine contamination documentation, an abandoned, illegal refinery operation where cleanup had stalled after the operators vanished into the maze of shell companies they hid behind. Noah had done these evaluations in Texas, in Louisiana, in New Mexico, dry, lonely places where everything toxic was already settling into the soil, waiting for someone with a camera and a clipboard to record the damage for a lawsuit that would drag on for years. It was the kind of work where no one expected heroics. He liked that. On his second day in the desert, he was joined by Asha Patel, a field interpreter contracted through a conservation nonprofit. She was in her late 30s, calm in a way only people who had lived a long time around danger could be, and she carried herself with the kind of authority that made Noah instinctively stand straighter when she spoke. Kabir arrived an hour after her, a lanky kid in his early 20s with a camera drone he treated as if it were an extension of his own heart. "We'll need aerials," Kabir said brightly, pulling on a baseball cap that didn't do a thing against the sun. "Courts like aerials, feels like high-budget evidence." Noah had grunted something neutral. He hadn't come here to make friends, or to chat, or to listen to Kabir excitedly narrate everything he filmed. He came to do a job, and then get out. That was before he heard the sound in the pit. This morning, his last morning, the day he meant to break down camp, take one final sweep, and then start the long drive back to Jaipur, had begun with the same rhythm as the others. A sunrise that felt colder than it should, a metallic taste on the air, the faint hum of Kabir prepping the drone's batteries beside the truck, while Asha reviewed maps dotted with contamination markers. None of them imagined the day would turn itself inside out. "Your last run?" Asha had asked earlier, glancing at him as she folded the map. "Yeah," I answered. "Heading home tomorrow." Home? She pressed, with that perceptiveness he still wasn't used to. He hesitated. Something like that. She didn't push further, though her eyes softened in a way that suggested she understood more than he said. People who worked around disaster tended to recognize the look of someone running from their own. Kabir interrupted with a cheer. "Drone's ready. Gonna grab shots of Pit 8 before the heat gets ugly." Pit 8, the biggest one. The one that stretched like a black lake in the center of the site. The one where Noah now stood alone, staring down at the small, oil-shrouded body clinging to its last breath. He didn't call for the others. Not yet. He didn't want their voices in the air while he tried to make sense of the moment uncoiling inside him. He felt the old muscles of emergency work tightening in his chest, the quick internal math, the silent questions that rose automatically. Depth, slope, stability, toxic concentration, possible entry points, possible exits. There were none. The pit was designed to trap liquid and anything unlucky enough to fall into it. But the cub was still breathing.
He closed his eyes for a moment, steadying himself. He had flown halfway across the world to avoid the place inside him that still whispered, "You were too late." He was not ready to face anything that resembled a helpless child stranded in a world too cruel for its size. He opened his eyes again, anyway. Behind him, the crunch of footsteps on sand announced Kabir and Asha's approach. "Hey, Blake, you find something down there?" Asha shaded her eyes with her hand. "Noah?" He didn't answer. Not right away. He pointed instead. Kabir followed the gesture, squinted, then inhaled sharply. "Is that... oh God. Oh no." Asha stepped forward, her expression tightening as she leaned over the edge. "It's alive," she said quietly. "Barely." Kabir's drone remote clattered to the ground. "We have to call the wildlife unit. They'll send a team." "No time," Noah said. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. Something in his tone made them both silent. Asha crouched, studying his face. "Noah, that oil is highly toxic. If you go in without gear..." "I know. And there's no harness point for a safe descent. The railing is unstable." "I know. The heat off that surface alone could knock you unconscious in minutes." "I know." Kabir swallowed. "So you're not actually considering..." But Noah was already unbuckling the canvas straps of his equipment bag, his movements slow but resolute, like a man who had reached a decision he didn't intend to survive questioning. Asha stepped closer. "Talk to us, please." And for the first time since he arrived in Rajasthan, he let someone hear the truth. "She's dying," he said, his voice low, steady, but cracked around the edges. "If we wait, she won't make it." Asha opened her mouth, but he cut her off gently. "I've watched enough things die without lifting a hand. Not this one." The desert wind pushed a wave of heat across their backs, rattling a loose sheet of metal nearby like an omen. Kabir looked from the pit to Noah, then to Asha, as if waiting for someone wiser to intervene. No one did. "I'll tie the rope," Kabir said finally, voice shaking. "At least let me do that much." Asha exhaled, long and hard. "You're making a terrible decision." Noah didn't disagree. Terrible decisions were his expertise. But some terrible decisions saved lives. And this time, he would not arrive too late. If you're watching this story unfold and your heart feels like it's pressing against your ribs, that's the kind of moment we honor on Whispering Hearts. Moments when a human life shifts because a small, fragile heartbeat asks for one more chance. If these stories matter to you, you can stay with us for the next chapter. But here at the edge of Pit 8, Noah Blake was not thinking about cameras or audiences or anything beyond the faint, stubborn breath of a cub who had every reason to give up. He cinched the rope around his waist. He stepped toward the edge. And for the first time in a very long while, he chose to go toward life instead of away from it.
The rope creaked once as Noah eased himself over the rim, boots searching for a foothold on the oil-slicked concrete. The sun had risen higher now, pouring heat down like a furnace. Every breath in the desert tasted faintly of petroleum and dust, but the air coming up from the pit was far worse, thick, chemical, almost sweet in a way that made the back of his throat sting. "Easy," Kabir called from above, voice strained as he braced the rope around a reinforcement beam. "The railing's loose." "I see it," Noah answered, though the truth was he barely felt the railing under his grip anymore. His focus had tunneled down to that lump of black at the far end of the pit. It hadn't moved again, not even a twitch. He counted the seconds between its shallow breaths, and each gap felt longer than the last. Asha knelt at the edge, one hand gripping the metal frame. "Noah, talk to me. You feel dizzy? Short of breath?"
He shook his head even as the fumes burned his sinuses. "I'm fine." "Don't lie to me," she snapped. "Oil fumes at that concentration can knock out a grown man in minutes." "Then I don't have minutes to waste." The wall sloped sharply as he descended, and when his boots reached the oily surface near the base, they slid out from under him. He caught himself with one hand, palm smacking the concrete hard enough to jar his teeth. A smear of black coated his skin instantly, slick and cold even under the sun. Asha's breath caught. "Noah!" "I'm okay." He wasn't, but okay was the only word he had left. He scanned the pit again. The cub lay half-curled against the wall where the oil thinned just enough for her to breathe. Her fur was still indistinguishable from the sludge, but her small flank rose, barely, and fell, barely. 30 seconds passed. One breath. Not enough. Noah's legs waded forward through the thick, sucking oil. It gripped his boots like hands dragging him downward. The deeper he moved, the colder it got. A strange, unnatural cold that shocked his muscles and made them clench in protest. "Tell me what you see," Kabir shouted from above. "A cub on her last breath," he said through clenched teeth. "She's giving up." Another step. Another. The oil reached his knees. Each movement was a battle. Then, his boot struck something solid under the surface. A piece of metal, jagged and half buried in the sludge. The impact jolted him forward, and for a terrifying second he felt himself pitching face first toward the oil. The world tilted. The fumes surged up his nose like fire. He slammed a hand against the wall to steady himself. Above, Asha gasped. "Noah! Noah, answer!" "I've got it," I forced out, still moving. He pushed on. 10 more feet. 8. 5. But something had changed. The cub's breaths stopped. No rise, no fall. Just stillness. "No." The word tore itself from Noah's chest before he could bite it back. "Come on, kid, not now. Not when I'm this close." He lurched forward the last few steps, oil dragging heavily at his legs. When he reached her, he knelt, ignoring the way cold sludge seeped instantly through his pants and into his skin. Up close, she looked impossibly small. Too small to be alone. Too small to die in a place meant for wasteland. "Hey," he whispered, voice shaking as he reached out. His fingers hovered over her back for a moment. Fear, grief, something deeper holding him still. Then he touched the slick fur. No response. For a heartbeat, he thought he was too late. Again. Then the faintest flutter, barely there, passed beneath his fingertips. A shallow, broken inhale. She was still here. "Good girl," he murmured. "Hold on, I've got you." He slid his arms beneath her fragile body. The oil made her slippery, almost impossible to lift, but he gathered her carefully, pressing her close to his chest to keep her head above the surface. Her eyes opened. A slit of gold. Dim, tired, but aware. Their gazes met for the second time that morning, and Noah felt something inside him tighten painfully, something he hadn't let himself feel in a very long time. A reason to keep going. "She's still breathing," he shouted upward. Kabir exhaled loudly in relief. "Thank God." Asha steadied her voice. "Then move, Noah, but don't rush. Slow and steady." He turned toward the rope, 20 feet away. It looked much farther from down here. He took one step. The oil resisted. He took another. It clung to him, pulling at his boots, his clothes, his resolve. The cub whimpered, a tiny rasping sound that didn't sound like a cry so much as a last question. "Are you staying?" "I'm not leaving you," he answered softly. A metal beam shifted above them with a groan, and a chunk of rusted concrete broke loose, splashing down just inches from Noah's leg. Oil surged outward in ripples, almost slipping him again. Kabir cursed loudly. "The railing is giving way! Noah, hurry!" He moved faster, but the pit fought him like a living thing. Every step forward felt like 3 steps back. The heat pressed on his skull. The fumes crawled into his lungs, making his head throb. Halfway, the cub went still again. Noah felt her tiny heartbeat against his chest, faint and fading. Too faint. "No," he whispered. "Stay with me. Don't quit now." Her ear twitched once. Hope flickered. He tightened his grip, using his free hand to claw his way along the wall until he reached the base of the rope. "Pull when I say," he shouted. "Ready," Kabir answered immediately. Noah braced his feet as best he could in the sludge, took one breath, the cleanest he could manage, and lifted the cub higher against his chest. "Now!" he called. Kabir pulled. Asha pulled. The rope tightened around Noah's waist, dragging him upward inch by inch. His boots scraped against the wall, slipping constantly. Twice he nearly lost his hold on the cub, but he trapped her with his forearm, refusing to loosen his grip for even a heartbeat. The fumes thickened near the halfway point. His head swam, his vision narrowed. Asha's voice floated down, urgent and sharp. "Noah, talk to me! You're almost there!" He gasped, forcing his lungs to drag in enough air to answer. "Still here." A final heave from above, and his hands reached the rim. He shoved his elbow over the ledge, then another, hauling himself out of the pit like a man crawling from a nightmare. Asha grabbed his arm. Kabir grabbed the back of his vest. Together they pulled him onto solid ground. Noah collapsed on the sand, the cub still pressed against his chest. She moved. Barely, but enough. For several long seconds, the world was nothing but the sound of Noah's breathing, ragged, desperate, alive. "You did it," Asha whispered, dropping to her knees beside him. Noah didn't answer. He only looked down at the tiny, oil-soaked creature he'd pulled from the edge of death. This time, he had not arrived too late.
Noah's pulse was still pounding in his ears when he lifted the tiny, oil-soaked cub from his chest and set her gently on the tarp Asha had pulled from the truck. She made no sound, no struggle. Her body was limp in a way no living creature's body should ever be. Only the faint, uneven flutter beneath her ribs told him she hadn't slipped away during the climb. Kabir hovered nearby, hands shaking as he tried to steady the drone camera that he'd instinctively grabbed. He wasn't even filming. His fingers simply didn't know what else to hold on to. "Noah," he said, voice quivering, "we have to get you checked. You inhaled a lot of fumes." "I'm fine," Noah muttered, though the world still rocked slightly around the edges. His lungs burned, but it didn't matter. "Help me with her." Asha knelt opposite him, already uncapping a canteen. "We need to get the worst of the oil off before it dries. It'll tighten around her and choke her." Noah nodded, reaching for a cloth. But as he did, the memory of his fall inside the pit, the sudden slip, the swinging drop, the beam collapsing above, crashed back through him. If he'd fallen forward instead of to the side, if his hands hadn't found that one patch of concrete, if Kabir's grip on the rope had faltered even slightly, she would have drowned and he likely would have gone with her. Asha must have sensed the shift in him. "She's alive," she said softly, not looking up from wiping the cub's face. "Focus on that." He did. He forced his hands to steady and began working the oil from her paws and belly. Each small limb was coated in thick sludge, cold and heavy, as if the pit refused to release its grip even after he'd carried her out. Kabir crouched beside them. I checked the rope anchor. That railing is worse than we thought. One more pull and it might have snapped." Asha shot him a sharp look. "Kabir, what? He should know." Noah didn't react. His attention was on the cub, whose breaths now came 3, then 5 seconds apart. Too slow, too weak. The minutes mattered, every one of them. "We need shelter," Asha said suddenly. "The sun's heating her too fast, and you," she pointed at Noah. "Your face is flushing. That's early-stage fume exposure." "I'm fine," he repeated. "You keep saying that, but you're the color of a tomato and swaying like a drunk man. Get inside the tent, both of you." The tent was cramped, barely tall enough to stand in, but at least it was cooler than the desert glare. Noah knelt on the ground, laying the cub on the tarp Asha had rummaged from the supply bins. She returned with a plastic bottle of dish soap, something bright blue and sharp-smelling. Kabir blumped. "We're washing a leopard with kitchen soap?" "It cuts oil," Asha said simply. "It's what rescues use when seabirds get caught in spills." Noah didn't argue. He held the cub carefully as Asha poured a thin line of soap along her spine. The blue liquid slid down her body, mixing with the black sludge to create streaks that looked almost unnatural, like ink running through water. "She's cold," Noah murmured, pressing a hand lightly against her ribs. "Cold as the pit." "That's shock, and oil cools fast in dry heat. Keep rubbing." Gently. They worked in silence for many minutes, each passing second another reminder that the cub was fragile enough to slip away without warning. Noah felt her chest rise, then stutter, then rise again. Every breath felt like a battle she might decide not to fight. He leaned closer. "Stay with me," he whispered. "You've come this far." A soft gust of wind rattled the tent walls. Sand scraped lightly against the canvas, a low hiss that sounded eerily like breathing. "Guys?" Kabir's voice broke the quiet. He had been standing near the entrance flap, peeking outside. "I don't want to alarm anyone, but there's movement out there." Asha froze. "Movement?" "Yeah, not animals, people. 2 of them, I think. They walked along the ridge just past Pit 3. Noah straightened, instinct locking into place. "Workers?" No, didn't look like workers. They looked careful." Asha exhaled sharply. "The company men. They've been known to come back to threaten locals who try to report them." Noah's jaw tightened. The last thing we needed was confrontation, especially now. We stay focused. They don't know we're here with a live animal. Kabir swallowed hard. "Should we pack up?" "Not until she stabilizes." Asha met Noah's eyes. "She needs more heat. Wrap her. Use your body temp." He pulled the cub gently against his chest, cradling her inside his jacket. Her fur, now half cleaned, was soft under the remaining oil. She felt like nothing more than a handful of bones wrapped in skin. No fight left, no protest, only surrender. He rocked her slightly, instinctive, old muscle memory from nights spent soothing a scared child who no longer existed. "Come on," he murmured. "Not yet. Not today." Kabir sat beside him, voice softening. "Do you think her mother's out there somewhere, looking for her?" Asha answered before Noah could. "Leopard mothers search for days, sometimes weeks." "Then she's probably still alive, right?" "Maybe." But her tone didn't match his optimism. Noah didn't speak. He knew too much about loss, about time, and the brutal indifference of the world. But he looked down at the cub, barely breathing, small enough to fit in one hand, and felt something he couldn't name tightening in his chest. Her ear twitched. A small, fragile movement. Almost nothing. But enough. "She's still fighting," he said quietly. Asha nodded. "Then so do we." Noah held the cub closer, letting his warmth bleed into her cold body. For the first time since the pit, he felt a flicker of something unfamiliar lifting inside him. Not hope exactly, but its distant cousin, the kind that whispered maybe instead of never. Outside, the wind swept along the dunes carrying the faint echo of footsteps moving away from the ridge. Whoever had been watching was gone. For now. Inside the tent, between life and danger, between grief and a fragile second chance, Noah Blake held the cub against his heart, and she exhaled a thin, trembling breath that told him she had not chosen death just yet.
The desert night settled around the camp like a quiet warning, cool, heavy, and holding its breath. Hours had passed since Noah had pulled the cub from the oil pit. Hours of washing, warming, coaxing, and praying in ways he hadn't prayed since losing Lily. Now the tent lantern cast a soft amber glow over his hands as he held the fragile creature wrapped against his chest. Her breathing, once little more than a fading whisper, had become slow but steady, still frighteningly shallow, but no longer slipping towards silence. Every rise of her ribs was a victory measured in millimeters. Noah didn't dare close his eyes. He knew what it was to close them and open them to a world forever changed. Asha sat beside him, legs crossed, her notebook open, though she hadn't written anything in nearly an hour. She was listening, watching both Noah and the cub with the careful attention of someone who had fought for life before and lost enough times to be humble about it. "Her lungs sound better," she said softly. "Not good, but better. Better." A word small enough to crush him with how much it meant. Kabir ducked inside the tent, carrying a battered thermos. "I reheated the water. Thought you might want some tea." His voice wavered, trying for normalcy, but not quite getting there. The moonlit tension outside had rattled him. Noah accepted the thermos, though he didn't drink. His hands were occupied cradling the cub, and truthfully, he wasn't sure he could swallow around the tightness in his throat. Kabir knelt and tilted his head. "She looks different, like she's here, not just fading out." "It's the warmth. Animals this young, they need a heartbeat close to survive. Her temperature is rising." She glanced at Noah. "You're helping more than you think." He didn't respond. He couldn't quite trust his voice. Instead, he brushed a thumb gently along the cub's cheek, now free of most of the oil. Her whiskers twitched faintly. Then, so slight the movement seemed imagined, her tiny paw flexed, claws retracted and extended in a slow, weak rhythm, a kneading motion, a living one. Kabir gasped. She moved! Asha smiled, the kind of smile that came from witnessing a miracle rather than expecting one. She's not giving up. Noah felt something sharp break open inside him. A sudden rush of heat behind his eyes forced him to look down, letting the shadows hide his expression. It wasn't joy, not yet. It was relief jagged enough to hurt. This cub, this speck of life pulled from darkness, was choosing to stay. And somehow, that choice felt like it reached into the hollow part of him where Lily's memory rested untouched. Outside the tent, the wind picked up again, dragging sand across the canvas like fingertips scratching, a reminder that nothing was certain, not safety, not time, not life clinging to life. Asha stood and stretched her back. "Noah, try a bit of hydration again." Noah nodded. She handed him the dropper, filled with water and electrolytes. Noah tilted the cub's head gently. "Come on," he whispered. "Just a little. You're stronger than you look." He released one drop on her tongue. A heartbeat. Another drop. Slowly. So slowly he nearly missed it. Her throat moved. One swallow, then a second. Kabir let out a shaky breath. "She's fighting! Seriously fighting!" Asha crouched again, checking the cub's paws, her ears, the pads of her feet. Her circulation's coming back. We might have a chance. She hesitated, then added, "We should think about what comes after tonight." Noah tensed. Meaning what? Meaning the men Kabir saw on the ridge might return, and they won't appreciate someone rescuing wildlife from their illegal waste pits. We need to be ready. Kabir swallowed. "You think they know we're here?" Asha shook her head. "Not yet, but they know someone is, and that's enough to be dangerous." Danger. Noah had lived with a different kind of danger for years. The danger of memory creeping up on him when he wasn't ready, the danger of guilt that turned every choice into a battlefield. But this was something external, something he could face directly. He looked at the cub, curled against him like she belonged there. "We're not leaving her," he said quietly. Asha's expression softened. "I know." Kabir nodded too. "We'll deal with whatever comes." The lantern flickered once, twice, as if acknowledging the promise. Minutes slid by in near silence. The cub shifted again, her breath hitching, Not from weakness this time, but from something closer to discomfort, the kind that meant her senses were waking up. Her ears twitched, then her nose. She pressed her forehead weakly into Noah's shirt. Asha noticed. That's a recognition response. Kabir grinned. She knows who saved her. Noah exhaled slowly, not trusting himself with words. He just held her, feeling the fragile heartbeat growing stronger against his chest. A life he'd pulled from a grave of tar and poison. A life that shouldn't be here, shouldn't have survived, yet refused to surrender even when everything around her said to. Outside the desert, the noises returned one by one. The whisper of sand, the hum of insects, the distant call of night birds. Life, everywhere, fragile and stubborn. Asha finally spoke again. Try to get some rest, Noah. She's stable enough for you to close your eyes a while. But Noah shook his head. Not tonight. He looked down at the cub. She was alone, in the dark, for too long. She's not going to wake up alone again. Kabir let out a breath, half admiration, half worry. Asha said nothing more. She didn't need to. The night deepened. The cub slept, and Noah Blake kept watch, unaware that somewhere beyond the dunes, another pair of golden eyes was watching too, searching the land, following a scent only a mother could recognize.
By the time the first pale light of morning slipped under the tent flap, Noah's back felt like someone had driven a steel bar between his shoulders. He hadn't moved much all night. The little body pressed against his chest had been too fragile, too precious to risk shifting. Asha's voice broke the quiet. "You're still awake?" He turned his head slightly. She was sitting cross-legged near the gear crates, hair tied back, eyes tired but watchful. Kabir lay on his side a few feet away, snoring softly, one hand still resting on the hard case that held his drone. "Somebody had to stay on watch," Noah said. His voice was rough, dry. "You're not somebody," she answered. "You're the one who climbed into a vat of crude oil yesterday. How's your head?" "Still attached." She gave him a look that told him she wasn't amused. "Any dizziness? Nausea?" "Nothing new." He angled his chin down at the cub. "She's the one I'm worried about." They both looked at her. Sometime during the night she had shifted, turning so that her small spine rested along his ribs, her head tucked into the hollow just under his collarbone. Her breathing, once ghost-thin, had deepened. It was still slower than it should be, but it was real, regular, stubborn. Asha crawled closer, slipping her hand beneath the fold of towel that covered the cub's back. "Warmer," she murmured. "That's good. We need to get the rest of that oil off her, though. It's still seeping from the undercoat." Kabir stirred, blinking himself awake. "Is she still with us?" "For now," Asha said. "Go start the stove. We'll need warm water." As Kabir ducked out, the tent filled with a brief gust of cold air and the distant smell of sand and metal. Noah's muscles protested as he finally shifted the cub out of his shirt and onto the tarp. She whimpered faintly at the loss of his warmth, then settled again as he cupped one hand around her chest. Under the lantern's fading glow, he could see more of her true color now. Where the oil had been scrubbed away, gold fur showed through, speckled with dark rosettes. Not just some stray cat, a leopard. Wild. Born for trees and rocks and starlit hunts, not pits and tar and human hands. Asha's voice broke the quiet. "We'll go section by section. Quick hands, gentle pressure, no cold shock." They worked in silence at first. Noah soaked a cloth, added soap, and began to work along the cub's flank. Oil loosened, turned thin, and ran off in black streaks that stained the tarp. Each time he exposed another patch of fur, he felt as if he were revealing a photograph from under chemicals in a dark room, watching a life develop where there had only been shadow. After a while,
Kabir's head appeared at the flap. We might have a situation," he said. Asha didn't look up. "Define situation." "Truck, coming in from the East Road. Not one of ours." Noah's hand stilled. "Company?" Kabir nodded. "Old white pickup. 2 guys in the cab. They're moving slow, like they're looking for something." Asha's jaw tightened. "Hide her." Noah gathered the cub back against his chest without thinking. She gave a weak protest, then burrowed into him, nose seeking his skin through the damp fabric of his shirt. He pulled his jacket around them both, leaving only a small gap for air. "Act like we're packing to leave," Asha said. "If they come down here, they see a foreign contractor breaking camp, nothing more." Kabir disappeared again. Outside, the low grind of the truck engine grew louder, then slowed. He could picture it in his mind. A dented hood, mud-stained tires, men with the bored, dangerous eyes of people who had gotten away with too much for too long. He listened, every sense stretched. The engine idled. A door creaked open. Voices in Hindi drifted faintly toward the tent. Asha slipped outside, her tone casual as she called out a greeting. The reply was sharp, suspicious. Noah's hands tightened around the cub. Her heart beat against his palm. Thin, fast, but there. If they find her, they'll call her a nuisance, a threat, another reason to clear the land. Minutes passed like hours. The conversation outside rose and fell. Asha's calm replies, the men's clipped questions. Then, finally, the sound Noah had been waiting for. A door slam, an engine revving, tires grinding over gravel. The truck pulled away. Asha ducked back in a moment later, shoulders dropping with the kind of relief that only comes when danger has just missed your door. "They think we're shutting down today," she said. "I didn't correct them." Kabir followed, eyes wide. "They asked if we'd seen any problem animals. I said no. I hope that doesn't mess with your honesty streak." "Today," Noah said quietly, "our priorities are different." He loosened his jacket. Cool air brushed over the cub's face. She twitched, then blinked. 2 slow, sticky blinks. For the first time since he'd pulled her from the oil, her eyes opened more than a slit. Gold, clearer now, tired, but undeniably alive, stared at him. She didn't understand what had just almost happened. She didn't know about trucks and men and threats muttered over poisoned ground. All she knew was warmth and hands that held instead of hurt, and a heartbeat that had kept pace with hers through the long night. "Hey," Noah whispered, "welcome back." Her tongue flicked dry and tentative against the inside of his wrist. Just once. Just enough. It wasn't gratitude. Animals didn't play by human rules. But to Noah, it felt like a fragile acknowledgement. I am here. You are here. For this moment, that's enough. Outside, the desert rolled on under a rising sun, indifferent to lawsuits, to corporate liability, to environmental justice and long-term care. Inside the thin walls of the tent, 3 tired humans and 1 newly stubborn leopard cub had quietly won 6 hours against the dark. It would not be the last battle they fought together. By late afternoon, the cub was no longer just a lump of fur and bone clinging to Noah's chest. She had become something else entirely. A small, stubborn presence that refused to slide back into the dark she'd come from. Her breathing had evened out. Her ears twitched at sounds. Twice now, her paws had made that feeble kneading motion against his shirt, as if testing the world for softness. They had moved her nest to a corner of the tent, layering an old blanket over a folded tarp to keep the cold from seeping up from the ground. Noah sat beside her, one knee drawn up, his back against a crate of supplies. Every few minutes, he reached out, almost without thinking, to rest his fingers lightly against her ribs and count the breaths. Asha poured hot water into a chipped mug and handed it to him. "You know you're going to have to call her something," she said. "You can't keep saying the cub forever." He gave a small, tired huff. "She's a wild animal, not a house cat. Wild animals still have names in field reports and in stories, especially in stories." Kabir looked up from where he was reviewing footage on his laptop, the drone's memory card plugged in at a crooked angle. "I've been calling her Miracle in my head, but that might be too dramatic." "Just a bit," Asha said dryly, though there was a hint of a smile in her eyes. Noah glanced at the cub. She lay curled on her side, gold fur now visible in wide patches, rosettes scattered across her back like ink marks. Her eyelids fluttered. For the first time, she didn't look like something pulled out of a nightmare. She looked like what she was supposed to be, young, vulnerable, alive. "What do people call second chances here?" he asked. Asha tilted her head. "In Hindi, there's Jeevan. It means life, not just breathing, but the whole thing, the fact of being here at all." "Jeevan," he repeated, tasting the word. It sat heavy and strange on his tongue, then settled. "Too long. Then shorten it," she suggested. "We shorten everything." Noah looked down at the cub again. One ear twitched, as if she knew they were talking about her. "Jeeva," he said. The sound was softer, easier. It fit the small body on the blanket better than the weighty formality of the original word. "Her name is Jeeva." Kabir grinned. "Jeeva," he echoed. "I like it. It sounds awake." As if to prove the point, the cub stirred. Her front paw lifted, weak but deliberate, and pushed against Noah's fingers. He froze, watching her. Her eyes opened a crack, thin gold slivers catching the dim light. "Hey, Jeeva," he murmured. She blinked slowly, then let her paw rest against his hand, claws tucked away. The gesture was clumsy, uncertain, but it reminded him so strongly of how Liam used to touch his wrist when drifting off to sleep that his chest ached. "You see what you've done?" Asha said gently. "She was dying. Now she's reaching for you." He swallowed. "I just got her out of a hole." "You did more than that," she replied. "You gave her back the option to choose what happens next." The thought lodged in him, uncomfortable and sharp. Choice. Options. Things Liam had never been given once the smoke filled those hallways. Hours slipped by. They finished cleaning the last of the oil from Jeeva's fur. She slept, woke, swallowed a few more drops of water, then slept again. Each tiny improvement carved deeper into Noah's awareness, knitting a thin, fragile thread between them. At one point, when the wind rattled the tent and a distant truck backfired on the road, Jeeva startled hard, her whole body tensing. She scrambled blindly, and without thinking, Noah scooped her up, holding her against his chest. Her heart hammered against his ribs. His own heart pitched to match it. "It's all right," he whispered into the fur between her ears. "You're safe. I've got you." She settled slowly, breath by breath, until the rigid tension gave way and she melted into him again, her small head tucked under his chin. Asha watched from the other side of the tent, saying nothing. Later, when night fell and Kabir snored softly once more, Noah lay on his back with Jeeva curled on his chest, her weight barely enough to crease his shirt. The desert was a sweep of black beyond the thin canvas wall. Somewhere out there, predators hunted and prey ran, and the world spun on indifferent to a man and a cub and a borrowed pocket of light. He stared at the tent ceiling, one hand resting on Jeeva's side, feeling each breath. The thought came to him, quiet and unwelcome. If I lose her now... He didn't finish it. He didn't have to. The hollow place where Liam's memory lived answered for him. For the first time since he'd arrived, he realized he was afraid of something other than his own past. He was afraid to lose her. Dawn slipped over the desert like a pale ribbon of gold, brushing light against the worn canvas of the tent. Noah blinked awake with a stiff neck, a dry throat, and the familiar weight of the small creature curled on his chest. Jeeva's warm breaths puffed shallowly against his skin, her body rising and falling with a rhythm that, while still fragile, carried more steadiness than the night before. Asha crouched near the stove, heating water. She looked over her shoulder. "She made it through another night," she whispered. "That's something to celebrate." Noah slowly sat up, cradling Jeeva against his shirt so she wouldn't lose warmth. "She didn't just make it," he murmured. "She held on, harder than anyone expected." As if in agreement, the cub stretched one leg stiffly and let out a faint, raspy chirp. A sound so small, so thin, yet so determined that Noah felt something inside him loosen, like a knot he didn't know he'd been holding had suddenly slipped apart. Kabir yawned awake from his cot. "I heard that little squeak. She's got opinions now." "Healthy ones," Asha said as she knelt beside Noah with a thermometer. "Let's check her temperature." Noah held her steady while Asha worked. Jeeva wriggled weakly, irritated but too exhausted to resist. When Asha checked the reading, her eyebrows lifted. "Warmer than yesterday," she said. "Still low, but improving." She leaned in, examining the cub's eyes. "She's more responsive, too. Look at her tracking your voice." Noah hadn't noticed it until now. Whenever he spoke, Jeeva's ears flicked toward him. Slow, deliberate motions, as if she understood his presence as comfort. "Maybe she likes my voice," he said, trying for humor. "She likes you," she corrected gently. "That's different." Kabir looked up sharply. "Speaking of liking things, Noah, didn't your phone keep buzzing last night?" He stiffened. "Signal comes and goes out here." Asha's gaze sharpened. "From who?" He hesitated. "Someone I haven't talked to in a long time." She didn't pry. She didn't need to. Jeeva shifted again, pushing her face into Noah's shirt, her whiskers brushing the fabric like she was trying to memorize his scent. He rubbed her back in slow circles, helping stimulate her struggling circulation the way Asha had taught him. "Let's try a little more hydration," she said, preparing the dropper. Noah tilted Jeeva's head gently. "Come on, kid. Just a few drops." She took them, slowly, stubbornly, as her paws flexed weakly in his hand. Small movements, but they mattered. Each one meant life, meant will, meant fight. "She's choosing to stay," Asha said quietly. "Animals know when to let go. They know when there's no path left. But she's pushing. That's not something we can teach." Noah swallowed hard. "I don't want to fail her." "You won't," Asha said, "not with how you've stayed beside her." But the word fail had already pulled open old shadows. His mind flashed, smoke, alarms, the crackling roar of flames, Liam's faint cough behind a locked door, the world tilting sideways when he realized he'd reached the hallway seconds too late. His throat tightened, his jaw clenched, and just as panic began to crawl up his spine, Jeeva lifted her head, unsteady but determined, and bumped her tiny forehead against his chin. Once, then again. A grounding touch, a reminder. Here, now, stay. It worked. His breath steadied. The heaviness loosened. "She's got good timing," Kabir joked softly. "Yeah, she does." They spent the morning slowly clearing the last stubborn traces of oil from Jeeva's paws and tail. Every now and then she made a faint, irritated noise, the kind that suggested she was recovering enough to be annoyed by them. "Attitude," Kabir whispered. "That's a good sign." By midday, the cub was strong enough to attempt a wobbling crawl across the blanket. She made it halfway before tipping onto her side. Noah steadied her gently, and she let out a tiny huff that sounded almost like defiance. "She wants to stand," Asha murmured. "She will, when she's ready." Outside, the afternoon heat rippled across the desert. Insects buzzed. Somewhere far off, a jackal barked. Life moved on as it always did. Inside the tent, Jeeva pushed herself upright on trembling legs. This time she stayed up, just for 3 seconds, but long enough for all 3 adults to freeze and stare in silent awe. Kabir whispered, "She's doing it." Asha smiled wide. "She's fighting for her place in the world." Noah felt his heart lurch, not painfully this time, not like the sharp crack of memory, more like a quiet pull, steady, insistent. He reached out, letting her tiny paw grab his finger. She clung to it with surprising determination. "You keep going," he whispered. "I'm right here." And as if she understood, Jeeva leaned into his touch and let out a soft, breathy sound, half chirp, half sigh. A sound that said, "I am here. I choose this. I choose to live." Night fell again, cool, crisp, filled with desert whispers. Noah lay awake with Jeeva curled atop his chest. Her breathing was deeper now, stronger, more certain. Asha whispered from her cot, "Get some sleep, Noah." "Maybe later," he murmured, fingers brushing Jeeva's spine. "You're allowed to rest," she said gently. He didn't answer, because deep inside, he knew the truth. He wasn't keeping watch for her anymore. He was keeping watch for himself. And he needed her alive just as much as she needed him.
The desert always changed tone at night. It wasn't dead or silent, it simply lowered its voice, as if trying to whisper truths humans rarely stopped long enough to hear. That night, the air seemed sharper, too clean, too still. Noah felt it on his skin before he saw anything. A tension, a hum, something just beyond the edge of vision. Jeeva was curled at the crook of his arm, breathing softly, her tiny ribs lifting with a strength that hadn't been there days ago. He brushed a finger along her spine, a habit he developed without meaning to, a silent check that she was still here, still warm, still choosing to fight. Asha was outside at the stove heating broth. Kabir sat cross-legged by the drone case, cleaning the dust from its landing gear. He hummed under his breath, a habit he fell into whenever he was nervous. "You hear that?" he asked suddenly. Noah lifted his head. "Hear what?" Kabir shrugged. "Don't know. That's the problem. Usually the desert hums at night. Insects, wind, something. But this," he gestured at the world just beyond the tent, "it feels like everything's holding its breath." Before Noah could answer, Asha pushed into the tent, her expression tight. "We have a problem." Noah sat straighter, keeping one hand on Jeeva. "What kind?" "Tracks," she said. "Fresh ones, not animal." Kabir's face drained of color. "Those men from yesterday?" "Maybe," Asha said. "Boot prints around the ridge. Someone walked close, too close, not an hour ago." Noah's chest tightened. His mind flashed to the truck, the questions, the way one of the men had scanned their equipment like he was memorizing what to steal or destroy. "They know we're here," Noah said. "They knew yesterday," Asha answered. "The real question is what they want now." Kabir zipped the drone case shut. "We should pack up." Noah shook his head. "We can't move her, not yet. She's barely walking." Asha looked at the cub, her eyes softening. "We won't leave her, but we need to prepare." Before Noah could answer, Jeeva stirred, ears twitching, nose lifting. Then suddenly, she made a soft, urgent chirp. Kabir blinked. "She's warning us?" Asha crouched beside Jeeva. Not warning, reacting. She listened to the sound again. That's a distress call. For what? Asked Noah. Asha stood slowly. For proximity, for presence. Something outside the tent is disturbing her. Noah rose to his feet, easing Jeeva into her blanket nest. He slipped out of the tent first. The desert air hit him like a cold slap, sharp, thin, humming with an energy he couldn't explain. The night stretched wide and dark. No wind, no insects, just an unnatural stillness. Then, movement. A flicker of shadow near the abandoned machinery. Noah froze and squinted. At first he thought it was a person. The silhouette was too large for a jackal, too smooth for a wild dog. Then it lifted its head. A slow, deliberate motion. Two golden shapes glowed back at him from the dark, eyes reflecting the lantern light. Unblinking, focused, watchful. Noah's breath caught. That's not a man, he whispered. Asha joined him silently. One glance was enough for her to understand. That, she murmured, is a leopard. Kabir stumbled out next, stopping short when he saw the creature. She's huge, he whispered. Too big to be. She's an adult female, Asha said. A mother. Noah's heart slammed against his ribs. A mother. Searching, watching, waiting for a cub. Jeeva, he whispered. The leopard took one step forward. Slow, controlled, every muscle coiled with intention. She didn't growl, didn't bare her teeth. She simply moved closer, her gaze never leaving Noah. Asha grabbed Noah's sleeve. Stay still, don't run, let her read you. Jeeva let out a high, trembling chirp from inside the tent. The sound cut through the air like a ribbon pulled taut. The leopard froze. Her ears snapped forward. Her tail lifted slightly. Her breathing changed. Sharper, faster, almost disbelieving. A mother hearing her child's voice after thinking it was gone. Noah felt something inside him crack open. Something old, something buried beneath smoke and sirens and a locked door. A parent who wasn't late. A parent who had not given up. The leopard took another step, then another. She was 20 feet away now, close enough for Noah to see the faint scars across her shoulder, the strength in her frame, the intensity burning in those golden eyes. Asha whispered, She smells her. She knows. Jeeva's chirp came again, this time louder, desperate. The leopard's body responded instantly, every instinct pulling her forward. Then, footsteps. Crunching gravel. Heavy. Human. From the opposite side of camp. A harsh male voice cut through the night. Didn't think we'd find you still out here. Noah's pulse kicked hard. The men from before, armed, angry, too close. The leopard spun toward the sound, body dropping into a defensive crouch. Everyone inside, Asha hissed. But Noah didn't move. Because Jeeva chirped again, panicked. Because the men were coming closer. Because the mother leopard was seconds from charging. Everything collided at once. Fear, instinct, memory. Noah, Asha hissed. Get back! But he stepped forward instead. Between the mother leopard and the approaching men. Between a wild creature and a human threat. Between what he had failed to do once and what he refused to fail again. The desert held its breath. The leopard did not attack. Not yet. She simply watched him, as if waiting to see what kind of man he would be this time.
The men approached with the slow confidence of people who believed no one could challenge them, boots scraping gravel, metal clinking at their belts. One carried a flashlight, its beam jerking drunkenly across the sand. The other held something shorter, heavier, too small to be a rifle, too large to be harmless. Noah didn't move. He felt the mother leopard behind him, close enough that he could sense her heat. Her breath rumbled low, a warning growl riding just beneath the surface. If he stepped wrong, if they stepped wrong, everything could detonate in seconds. Asha whispered sharply, "Noah, back up, now!" But he stayed where he was, feet planted, shoulders squared. "I've run once, not again." The men stopped 20 yards out. The taller one flicked the flashlight toward Noah's face. "We told you this area wasn't safe for outsiders." Asha stepped beside him before he could speak. "We are packing to leave. We had a detour with equipment." "Equipment," the man repeated, dripping with disbelief. "Funny, considering we tracked other kinds of activity." His gaze dropped toward the tent, where Jeeva's faint chirps filtered through the canvas. Noah felt a surge of protective heat rise in his chest. Jeeva chirped again, louder this time, a terrified, thin sound that cut straight through his spine. The flashlight beam swung toward the noise. The mother leopard snapped. A low, guttural snarl vibrated the ground under Noah's boots. The men froze. One swore under his breath. "What the? Is that a cat?" asked the shorter man, stepping back. "Not a cat. A big damn problem." Noah raised a hand. "Stay still. Don't run. Don't threaten her." The taller man barked out a harsh laugh. "She looks threatening enough on her own." "She's a mother," Noah said. "Her cub is in our tent. She's not here to attack you. She's here to get her baby back." Kabir whispered from behind the tent flap, "Noah, please." But Noah didn't waver. He took one slow step forward, placing himself fully between the men and the leopard. "You're going to walk away. Right now." The shorter man scoffed. "Or what? You're gonna fight us? You and your house cat over there?" Behind Noah, the leopard emitted a low, trembling growl that rattled through the night air like distant thunder. Her claws scraped the sand. The taller man stiffened. "Don't provoke her," he hissed at his partner. "She's not your problem. Leave, and no one gets hurt." The shorter man lifted the object in his hand slightly. A metal pipe, dented, greasy. A weapon meant for intimidation, or worse. Noah's pulse thudded in his ears. He didn't see the pipe. He saw a door engulfed in flames. He saw smoke curling around the frame. He heard Liam cough one last time. He remembered being too slow, too late. Not tonight. Not for this cub. Not for this mother. He took another slow step forward, voice steady. "Put it down." The shorter man smirked and opened his mouth. He never finished the sentence. The mother leopard surged forward, not in attack but in warning, stopping just 2 strides behind Noah. Sand sprayed under her paws. The men jerked back, stumbling over their own boots. "She's gonna pounce!" the shorter man shrieked. "She's not," Noah said quickly, hands lifted slightly. "She's warning you. Leave, now." The taller one swallowed hard, his bravado cracking. The flashlight trembled in his grasp. "Let's go. Forget this." "But," I said, "let's go." He grabbed his partner by the arm, dragging him backward. They retreated step by step, clumsily, never turning their backs completely, until darkness swallowed their outlines and their panicked footsteps faded into the desert. Only when silence returned did Noah exhale a long, shaking breath. Asha whispered, "You're insane." Kabir wheezed out a laugh, half fear, half admiration. "Absolutely insane." Noah didn't hear them. He turned slowly. The mother leopard was standing just feet away, muscles still taut, tail twitching, but eyes fixed only on the tent behind him, the place where her cub waited. Her gaze flicked to him briefly, not hostile, not grateful, simply measuring. Then she lowered her head, sniffing the air, taking one cautious step toward the tent. Asha grabbed Noah's arm. "Don't let her inside. She could panic." "Let her smell us first," Noah said. "Let her understand we're not a threat." He crouched slowly, hands open, voice soft. "Easy. She's safe. Your baby is safe." The leopard's ears twitched. For a moment, she stood frozen in a perfect sculpture of tension and instinct. Then softly, unbelievably, she made a low, chuffing sound. A sound cats only made when they felt curiosity instead of fear. "She recognizes your scent," Asha whispered. "From the cub's fur." Noah's chest tightened. "She knows I held her child." For a moment, the world felt impossibly still. Man and predator breathing the same air, bound by the fragile thread of a life neither could claim ownership of. Then Jeeva chirped again, louder, insistent. The leopard stepped around Noah, stopping inches from the tent flap. She waited, tense, trembling with maternal instinct, but she did not force her way in. Asha breathed. "She's asking permission." Noah swallowed. "Then we give it." He reached for the tent flap with careful hands. Behind him, the night shifted. The desert wind stirred again, and the mother leopard lowered her head, ready to see the cub she thought she had lost forever.
Noah lifted the tent flap slowly, careful not to startle either mother or cub. The dim lantern glow spilled out onto the sand, casting a pool of warm light at the leopard's feet. She stepped forward, one paw, then another, her movements fluid but trembling with barely restrained urgency. Inside, Jeeva let out a soft, broken chirp. A call of instinct, a plea, a memory resurfacing from the brink of death. The mother froze for half a heartbeat, her ears snapping forward. Then she pushed her head through the flap. Asha whispered, "Everyone stay back. She needs to reach the cub first." Kabir held his breath so tightly his hands shook. Noah stepped aside, letting the leopard pass, but he didn't move far. His entire body felt wrapped in static. Fear, hope, disbelief, all fighting for space in his chest. The mother leopard padded into the tent, massive yet impossibly silent. Jeeva lay curled on the blanket, her head bobbing weakly as she tried to rise. Her legs trembled, then gave out. She chirped again, louder, raw. The sound of a child calling home. The mother lowered her head and inhaled deeply, her nose brushing the cub's fur. She froze, taking in the mixed scents of oil, sweat, human hands, desert sand, survival. For 3 heartbeats, the tent felt like the center of the world. Then the mother made a soft rumbling sound, half purr, half whimper. Relief, recognition, claim. Jeeva tried again to stand, wobbling dangerously. Noah instinctively moved forward to steady her, but Asha grabbed his arm. "No," she whispered. "Let her do it." The mother gently nudged the cub upright with her muzzle. Jeeva let out a tiny squeak of effort, pushing against her mother's face. And in that instant, the fatigue seemed to melt from the cub's body. She pressed herself beneath the mother's jaw, burying her face into the familiar warmth. The sound that followed was unlike anything Noah had heard. A deep, rolling vibration from the mother's chest, full of grief and joy and apology all at once. A sound that said, "I thought I lost you. I searched. I waited. I never stopped." Kabir wiped his face with the back of his sleeve. "Holy, this is unbelievable." "It's nature, raw and perfect," Asha whispered. Noah stood frozen, watching the scene unfold inches from him. The mother licked Jeeva's head again and again, frantic at first, then slowing as she reassured herself the cub was alive, breathing,
present. Jeeva made tiny cooing sounds, pushing her paws weakly against her mother's chest. The gesture was instinctive, needing for comfort, for safety, for milk she was too weak to drink just yet. And then, unexpectedly, the mother's gaze shifted. She looked at Noah, not with fear, not with aggression, with something deeper, older, more primal, a kind of recognition. He felt the air leave his lungs. Asha whispered, "She knows. She knows you saved her cub." Noah didn't move, couldn't. The mother leopard stepped closer, her massive head almost level with his chest. Jeeva dangled lightly from her jaws as she readjusted her grip, then settled the cub gently against her forearm. She chirped once, softly, a breath of acknowledgement. Noah's vision blurred. Memories crashed into him. Liam's laugh, the smell of smoke, the helpless weight of being too late. But here, now, this wild creature was telling him something he hadn't heard in years. You were not late this time. You were not broken. Not now. Then the moment shattered. A sharp crack split the night, a sound like a stone dropping onto metal. Kabir spun toward the tent entrance. What was that? Asha's face drained of color. Gunshot. That was a gunshot. Jeeva stiffened in her mother's paws. The mother leopard snapped upright, body coiled tight, eyes blazing. Noah's heart slammed against his ribs. They're back. Another crack echoed across the sand, closer this time. Kabir whispered, "They're shooting." At what? Asha listened, her face tightening. Warning shots. They're trying to scare something off. Noah's blood ran cold. The mother must have crossed their path. They saw her. They know a big predator is here. And they'll shoot to protect themselves, Asha finished grimly. The mother leopard growled, a deep, guttural sound that shook the tent walls. She pushed Jeeva gently behind her, positioning herself between her cub and the danger outside. Noah stepped forward. We have to get them out of here. Kabir stared at him. You want us to lead a leopard out of camp? Noah, she's wild. He's also a mother, Noah said firmly, and she won't survive a confrontation with armed men. Another shot cracked through the night. Closer. Too close. The mother hissed and shoved Jeeva further beneath her body, muscles rippling with panic and rage. Asha grabbed Noah's arm. What's your plan? He swallowed hard. He didn't have one. Not fully. But he knew one thing. If he stood still now, if he hesitated again, he would be repeating the same moment that had taken Liam away. No more being too late. Not this time. He looked at Asha. We guide them out. We distract the men. We make space for the mother to escape with the cub. Kabir blinked. We what? The mother leopard growled again, pacing the tent, desperate to flee but unwilling to abandon Jeeva. Noah crouched low, voice steady. She wants to leave. She's just waiting for us to give her a path. He looked at the flap, where night pressed in thick and dangerous. Let's buy her that chance. The next gunshot cracked loud enough to rattle the poles. The desert wasn't whispering anymore. It was screaming. The tent shook with the force of the next gunshot. Dust rained from the seams overhead. Jeeva whimpered, tiny and trembling beneath her mother's chest. The mother leopard snapped her head toward the sound, muscles coiled, tail lashing in agitation. She wanted to run, she wanted to fight, she wanted both at once. Noah steadied himself on one knee, forcing his pulse to slow. We don't have time, he whispered. If those men get closer, they'll see her, and they'll shoot first. Kabir ran a shaking hand through his hair. So how do we get a full-grown leopard and a half-dead cub past armed men without... Asha cut him off. We don't go around them. She looked at Noah. Noah looked back. Realization dawned at the same moment. We go through, he said. Kabir stared. Through? Through? Are you both out of your minds? But Asha was already pulling gear into a pile, blankets, the medkit, rope. We create a diversion, something big, something loud. They'll chase the noise. And we lead the leopard out the opposite side. There's a ravine to the northwest, steep walls, enough cover for her to slip into the brush. Kabir blinked rapidly. You expect me to run toward the men with guns? You won't run toward them, Asha said. You'll run sideways. They'll hear the drone, not you. Kabir froze. The drone. Wait, that could actually work. Another gunshot tore the air, closer now, 50 yards, maybe less. The mother leopard snarled, teeth flashing in the lantern light. Jeeva pressed herself deeper into her mother's fur. Noah crouched closer to them, palms open. Hey, he murmured, voice steady despite the hammering in his ribs. We're helping you, but you have to trust us. The mother leopard's gaze locked on his. For a terrible moment, he wondered if she would attack instead, fear and instinct battling the fragile connection between them. But she held his stare, breathing hard, every inch of her poised on a razor-thin line between violence and flight. Finally, she dipped her head, one small, almost imperceptible motion. Asha whispered, She understands you're trying to get her out. Noah swallowed. Let's move. Kabir ran outside, clutching the drone case. The night swallowed him quickly. Noah heard a faint whir of rotors spinning up, then rising, then slicing through the stillness. The sound bounced off the metal pipes and abandoned machinery, loud, jarring, unmistakable. A man shouted. A flashlight beam jerked wildly. Another gunshot cracked upward, sharp and frantic. They're shooting at it, Kabir yelled from somewhere near the ridge. Good. It meant they weren't shooting toward the tent. Asha, Noah whispered, now. Together they lifted the back flap, the one facing the northwest. The desert beyond stretched in a ripple of shadows and low shrubs. The ravine edge was 100 yards out, far enough to be dangerous, close enough to be possible. The mother leopard paced once, twice, her instincts urging her forward, her fear pulling her back. Jeeva chirped weakly beneath her mother's fur, and the sound broke whatever hesitation she had left. She stepped outside. Noah followed immediately, keeping a slow, steady pace. Asha trailed behind, watching for movement. Halfway to the ravine, the ground dipped into a slight hollow. The leopard paused, sniffing the air. Noah froze beside her. His heart pounded so loudly he feared she could hear it. Another gunshot split the night, again, this time from the opposite direction. The sound ricocheted off the rocks. Jeeva squeaked in terror. The mother leopard whipped her head around, her body half turning. For a second, Noah thought she might bolt back toward the danger, back toward the tent, back toward the noise that threatened her cub. No, he whispered, soft, firm, steady. Come on, this way. He didn't reach out, didn't touch her, just stood there, breathing slow, keeping himself small, open, present. Asha whispered behind him, Noah, she's listening to you. The leopard blinked once, golden eyes reflecting the thin moonlight. Then, as if making a choice she didn't entirely trust, but refused to refuse, she turned back toward the ravine. They reached the edge moments later. The drop was steep, 12, maybe 15 feet, but sloped enough for a leopard to navigate. Asha exhaled in relief. She can make that. But just as the mother prepared to leap, a shout tore through the night. There, behind the tent! Noah's blood ran cold. He turned. 2 flashlights bobbed toward the camp from the east. The men had realized the drone wasn't their real problem. They were coming back. Asha, Noah said quietly, get lower. The mother leopard snarled, crouching protectively over Jeeva. Noah slowly raised both hands, positioning himself between the men and the animals. They don't see them yet, he whispered. We have a few seconds. Kabir ran toward them from the ridge, panting. Drone is down. I bought time, but not much. The men shouted again. Their boots pounded the earth. One flashlight beam swung dangerously to the side, close to catching the gleam of the mother leopard's fur. Asha hissed, Noah, they're going to spot her. I know. He stepped forward. Asha grabbed his arm. Noah, no! But he pulled free and shouted into the night, Hey, over here! The flashlight beams whipped toward him instantly. One man raised his weapon. Asha screamed, "Noah!" Noah lifted both arms, palms out. "You want someone? You want a problem? Then leave everything else alone and come after me." For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then the shorter man shouted, "You again!" And they charged toward him. "Noah, run!" Kabir shouted. But Noah didn't run. He stepped backward toward the ravine, toward the mother leopard, toward Jeeva. Behind him, the mother watched, golden eyes intense and burning with something fierce and ancient. And Noah realized something with startling clarity. She was waiting. Not for escape, not for safety, for him. For the moment he would get them clear. He whispered without turning, "Go, take her, now." Another gunshot cracked. Sand exploded inches from his feet. And the mother leopard leapt. Not away, not toward the men, but down into the ravine, carrying Jeeva with her. Safe, hidden, alive. Noah closed his eyes once, exhaling a shaking breath as relief hit him like a flood. He had not been late. Not this time. "Noah, move!" Asha screamed. He turned. The men were almost on him. And Noah Blake ran, not away from danger, but straight into it. Because he had finally done what he wasn't able to years ago. He chose to stand in the doorway. He chose to block the fire. He chose to buy them time. He chose to save someone.
Noah didn't remember much of the sprint that followed, only flashes. A shout behind him, the sting of a bullet clipping a rock by his foot, the sound of Kabir yelling his name, the blur of Asha's hand grabbing his sleeve, dragging him behind a stand of thorn bushes where the men's flashlights couldn't reach. They hid there, breathless, pressed against the earth as the two men searched the darkness, cursing, stumbling, firing once more into the empty night. The desert held every sound in a tight fist. Then, finally, the truck engine roared to life, and its fading growl melted into the distance. Silence returned. Real silence. The kind that only comes after danger has decided, for now, to leave you alive. Kabir exhaled so hard he nearly collapsed. "Never, never ask me to do something like that again." Asha smacked Noah's arm, not lightly. "You absolute idiot," she hissed. Then her voice cracked just a little. "But thank you." Noah didn't answer. He couldn't. Because once the terror drained away, something else rose up, an ache so deep and heavy he didn't know how to hold it. Had they escaped? Yes. Were they safe? For the moment. But the ravine was empty now. The mother leopard and her cub were gone. Asha put a hand on his shoulder. "They made it. You saw." "Yeah," Noah murmured, staring at the ravine edge. "I saw. But seeing wasn't the same as accepting." The next morning, light spilled across the desert like a blessing Noah wasn't sure he deserved. They packed camp slowly, each movement deliberate, quiet. Kabir hums to himself, an anxious habit, but also a sign that life, however shaken, was moving forward again. Asha folded the medical tarp. "We did good work here, and we lived to tell it." Noah nodded, but his eyes kept drifting to the horizon, to the place he had last seen Jeeva's tiny paw tucked against her mother's chest. He felt strangely hollow. Proud, relieved, yes, but hollow too, like part of him had been carved out and carried off into the wilderness. Asha noticed. Of course she did. She's where she belongs, with her mother, not with us, not with a tent and blankets. "I know," Noah whispered. "Doesn't make it easier." "No," she agreed. "It never does." They loaded the last of the crates into the Jeep. The heat was rising quickly, shimmering over the sand. Noah closed the back hatch, then paused, uncertain, hesitant. "I want to check the ravine." Kabir blinked. "Why? They'll be miles away by now." "Maybe, but I just need to see." Asha exchanged a glance with Kabir, then nodded. "We'll wait here." Noah walked alone, boots crunching quietly over the sun-baked earth. Each step felt heavier than the last, not from exhaustion, but knowing this was the final page of something he never meant to start. The ravine was empty now, sharp-edged, shadowed, silent. He stood there, scanning the brush, the rocks, the narrow trails where an apex predator might slip without a sound. Nothing moved. He exhaled. Maybe this was all he'd get. A memory of moonlight on golden fur, a tiny chirp of recognition, a mother's fierce devotion. But as he turned to leave, a rustle of movement shifted the air. He froze. At first he saw nothing. Then, like a trick of the light becoming real, the mother leopard appeared at the far end of the ravine, silent, powerful, watching him. His heart jumped into his throat. She came no closer. She didn't need to, because nestled against her front leg, blinking sleepily in the morning light, was Jeeva. Stronger, steadier, alive. Her fur caught the sun, rich gold streaked with faint darker patches where the oil had once clung. Her head lifted, ears forward. She stared across the distance at Noah with an unmistakable glimmer of recognition. "Asha," he whispered, though she wasn't near enough to hear. "She made it." Jeeva wobbled forward one step, but was stopped gently by her mother's paw. The message was clear. "Stay. You are wild now. Your world is here." Still, Jeeva raised one small paw, held it in the air, a gesture he knew too well. His breath caught. A wave, a goodbye. Noah lifted his own hand slowly, returning the gesture. For a long moment, predator and man, wild and human, past and present, held each other's gaze. The mother leopard chuffed once, low and soft, before turning. She nudged Jeeva gently, and together they slipped into the brush, disappearing like ghosts returned to their rightful world. This time, Noah didn't feel hollow. He felt whole. The flight back to the US was long, quiet. Noah watched clouds drift beneath the aircraft, watched the world curve away. His phone buzzed as they landed, delayed texts, old notifications, messages from people he hadn't spoken to since the fire. And one from Emily. Just 3 words. "Are you okay?" He stared at them for a long time before typing back, "I think I'm finally getting there." Her reply came seconds later. "Then come home. We'll talk." He closed his eyes, letting the words settle. They didn't fix everything. They weren't supposed to. They were just a beginning, and beginnings were enough. Weeks later, after paperwork and reports and restless nights, Noah sat in his backyard in Oregon, the air cool and damp with the scent of pine. He pulled out his phone, opened the gallery, and scrolled to a single photo Asha had snapped from a distance. Jeeva standing beside her mother, eyes bright, posture steady, the desert wind ruffling her fur. Alive, wild, exactly what she was meant to be. He stared at the image for a long time, not with grief, not with regret, with gratitude, with peace. "I saved you, and somehow you saved me," he whispered. Above him, the sky deepened to dusk. Stars appeared, slow, deliberate, patient. The world felt larger again. He finally understood. Some lives you rescue, some lives you lose, and some, if you're lucky, teach you how to live again. Jeeva had done all 3, and Noah Blake was no longer too late. He was finally, blessedly, right on time.